Tonight, dear friend, we travel back in time to a quiet corner of medieval Europe where the stars still shimmer above rolling hills and the world has not yet awakened. Imagine yourself standing on a narrow dirt path that winds gently through the countryside. The night air is cool against your face, carrying the earthy scent of damp soil, fresh grass, and the faint sweetness of wildflowers that close their petals until morning. Somewhere nearby, a small owl calls softly before falling silent once more. The village ahead is wrapped in darkness, its timber-framed cottages resting peacefully beneath thatched roofs silvered by moonlight. Tiny wisps of smoke no longer rise from their chimneys. The hearth fires have burned low, leaving only faint embers that quietly glow inside sleeping homes. No voices drift across the fields. No wagons rumble along the roads. Even the village dogs remain curled beside warm fireplaces, dreaming through the final hours of night. Only one sound gently fills the silence: the river. It flows with patient confidence, following the same winding path it has carved for centuries. You can almost hear every small ripple as clear water slips around smooth stones before continuing its endless journey toward distant valleys. If you pause for a moment, another sound slowly joins the river, a deep, rhythmic creak, wood against wood, slow, steady, almost like the peaceful breathing of a giant asleep. Nearby stands the village watermill. Its great wheel turns almost lazily beneath the moonlight, pushed by the gentle current that never truly rests. Every rotation is unhurried, every movement familiar, as though the mill itself has learned the quiet rhythm of time. Long before clocks measured the hours with careful precision, this place already understood the passing of each day. Here, mornings begin before sunrise, far earlier than most villagers would ever choose. Picture the scene. A narrow wooden bridge crosses the stream toward the sturdy stone mill. Moss grows between weathered boards, polished smooth by generations of careful footsteps. Tiny droplets of water sparkle upon the railings like scattered pieces of glass beneath the fading stars. At the far end of the bridge, a single lantern suddenly glows. Its warm amber light appears almost magical against the cool blue darkness. Someone has awakened. The miller. His day begins while nearly everyone else still sleeps. Wrapped in a thick wool cloak to guard against the morning chill, he steps quietly across the bridge, carrying the small lantern in one hand and a heavy iron key in the other. His boots know every plank, every loose board, every familiar creak. He has walked this same path thousands of times, perhaps more. The routine has become almost as natural as breathing. There is no rush, no frantic pace, only quiet purpose. For although the village still dreams, many families will soon depend upon the work that begins during these peaceful hours. Without fresh flour, the village baker cannot prepare today's bread. Without bread, breakfast tables remain empty. Without the mill, harvests cannot fully become meals. The miller's labor touches nearly every household, though few people witness how early it truly begins. He reaches the heavy oak door. The iron key slides slowly into its lock. A soft click breaks the silence. The wooden door opens with a long, familiar sigh. Inside, darkness welcomes him. The air smells wonderfully different from outside. There is the comforting scent of dry grain resting inside large woven sacks, the rich aroma of aged timber beams that have supported the roof for decades, a faint trace of stone dust left by countless hours of grinding, and somewhere beneath it all, the clean smell of cool river water flowing just beyond the thick walls. He hangs the lantern upon a sturdy wooden peg. Golden light slowly spreads across the room. Huge millstones wait patiently in the shadows. Wooden gears stand perfectly still for the moment. Empty grain bins line one wall. Simple tools rest exactly where they were placed the evening before. Everything has its place. Everything serves a purpose. Before any grain can be ground, the miller begins with careful inspection. He runs practiced fingers along wooden beams. He checks the leather straps. He listens, not merely with his ears, but with years of experience. A healthy watermill speaks in quiet sounds. The splash beneath the wheel, the whisper of flowing water, the gentle settling of timber. Anything unusual would immediately draw his attention. A strange knock, a sharper creak, a missing rhythm. These tiny clues often matter more than hurried repairs later in the day. Outside, the eastern horizon begins almost imperceptibly to soften. Not yet sunrise. Only the faintest promise that morning will eventually arrive. Mist rises gently from the river, drifting across nearby reeds before curling around the base of the great wheel. For a moment, the entire mill seems to float upon clouds. Imagine standing there beside the miller. You draw a slow breath. The cool air fills your lungs. You hear the steady rush of water, the quiet flutter of wings as a small bird changes its perch, the distant rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. Nothing demands your attention. Nothing asks you to hurry. The world moves exactly as it should. And perhaps this is one reason medieval mornings often feel so calming to imagine. Life was certainly difficult. Work was demanding. Comforts were few. Yet before the village awakened, these peaceful moments belonged almost entirely to nature. The river did not care about kings or wars. The stars continued their silent journey across the heavens. The first birds greeted another day exactly as their ancestors had done for generations. Standing beside the turning water wheel, the miller becomes part of this timeless rhythm. Not its master, but simply another faithful participant in a world that asks only steady hands, patient effort, and respect for the changing seasons. The miller reaches for a long wooden lever fastened beside the great machinery. His hands move without hesitation, guided by years of quiet experience rather than hurried thought. Every motion has become part of a familiar ritual, repeated so many mornings that even in darkness he could almost perform it by memory alone. The first task is never to begin grinding. Instead, he listens. He waits beside the turning water wheel with remarkable patience, allowing the sounds of flowing water to tell their story. Imagine yourself standing quietly beside him. The river is never completely silent. It whispers against rounded stones, slips beneath the wooden bridge, and brushes gently against the supporting beams of the mill. Somewhere farther downstream, the current widens into calmer water where reeds sway softly in the faint breeze. The miller understands these sounds better than most people understand spoken words. A stronger current after heavy rain, a slower flow during dry summers, the faint scrape of drifting branches. Even small changes could affect the great wheel that powers the entire building. Tonight, or rather, this final hour before dawn, the river sounds healthy, balanced, calm, reliable. Satisfied, the miller gently adjusts a wooden gate that controls the flow of water toward the wheel. The change is almost impossible to notice. Yet gradually, the wheel begins turning with slightly greater strength. One broad paddle after another disappears beneath the water before emerging again, glistening beneath silver moonlight. Inside the mill, enormous wooden gears awaken. Their deep voices echo softly through the building. There is no harsh grinding, no violent movement, only a comforting rhythm that seems almost alive. You can almost imagine the mill breathing, slowly, steadily, patiently. Above, thick oak beams support the heavy roof. Some have stood here for generations, bearing tiny marks left by the tools of carpenters whose names have long since faded from memory. The wood carries its own quiet history. tiny scratches, smooth edges polished by countless hands, darkened places where lantern smoke settled year after year. Every beam reminds us that medieval buildings were not simply constructed, they were cared for, repaired, passed from one generation to another. Outside, the sky continues its gentle transformation. The brightest stars slowly disappear one by one, though the moon still hangs peacefully above the western hills. Mist curls across nearby fields where wheat and barley wait patiently for daylight. Tiny droplets of dew gather upon every blade of grass, sparkling like scattered pearls whenever the lantern's warm light reaches them. Imagine taking a slow walk beyond the mill. The earth beneath your boots feels slightly damp from the cool night air. Wild rabbits have left delicate tracks along the edge of the path. A fox, having completed its nightly hunt, slips quietly toward the shelter of distant woods. Nature is changing shifts. The creatures of darkness return home. The creatures of daylight have not yet begun. For these few precious moments, the countryside belongs to neither. It simply rests. Back inside the mill, the miller unties the first sack of grain. Barley. Its gentle, earthy aroma rises immediately into the cool air. He scoops a handful into his palm. The kernels are firm, dry, and clean. Years of experience have taught him that healthy grain can often be judged before a single stone begins to turn. A careful miller protects not only his reputation, but also the food of every family who trusts him. Poor flour could mean disappointing bread. Good flour meant nourishment. Simple though the work may appear, it demanded remarkable skill. Contrary to modern imagination, the miller did far more than allow machinery to work alone. He constantly adjusted the stones, watched the speed, measured the grain, prevented overheating, listened for changes invisible to everyone else. His greatest tools were not strength or speed. They were patience, observation, consistency. These quiet virtues shaped much of medieval life. Many occupations depended less upon dramatic moments than upon thousands of careful decisions made almost without notice. The baker watched the rising dough. The shepherd observed the weather. The blacksmith listened to the sound of hammer upon iron. And here, inside the watermill, another craftsman listened carefully to turning stone and flowing water. Across the village, signs of morning slowly begin to appear. A rooster calls somewhere beyond the fields, not loudly, simply enough to remind the countryside that another day approaches. A second rooster answers from farther away. Then silence returns once more. Thin ribbons of pale blue now stretch across the eastern horizon. The first true light of dawn is still hidden behind distant hills, but its arrival is certain. Within another hour, farmers will begin loading grain onto wooden carts. Children will rub sleep from their eyes. Smoke will once again rise from cottage chimneys. Fresh bread will fill the cool morning air with one of history's most comforting aromas. But all of that depends upon what begins here, in these quiet hours when almost no one is watching. Imagine standing once more beside the miller. You hear the steady splash of the water wheel, the gentle rumble of ancient gears, the distant murmur of the waking countryside. Nothing feels hurried, nothing feels anxious, only the peaceful certainty that every new day begins with small, faithful routines carried out by ordinary people whose names history rarely recorded, yet whose work quietly sustained entire communities. And perhaps that is one of history's gentlest lessons. The world has often been changed not only by kings, generals, or explorers, but also by people who rose before dawn, lit a single lantern, and simply did the work that needed to be done. As the first golden rays of sunlight finally touch the roof of the old watermill, the village begins to stir. Another medieval day has quietly begun, and our peaceful journey through that day is only just beginning. Tonight, dear friend, remain beside the quiet riverside mill for just a little longer. The first light of dawn has only begun to brush the eastern horizon, yet the busiest hours of the miller's day are already unfolding with calm purpose. Imagine yourself standing inside the old watermill once more. The lantern hanging from the oak beam burns with a steady amber glow, casting long, dancing shadows across the rough stone walls. Outside, the river continues its endless conversation with the wooden water wheel, whose measured turning has become the gentle heartbeat of the building. The miller removes his heavy wool cloak and hangs it carefully beside the door. The morning air is still cool enough that his breath briefly appears in the lantern light before fading away. He rubs his hands together, not because he is in a hurry, but because warmth helps steady fingers that will soon make countless careful adjustments. Unlike many occupations in the medieval world, the work of a miller demanded patience before strength. Every moving part had to be checked. Every sound had to be trusted. Every detail mattered. He walks slowly toward the great millstones that dominate the center of the room. Each stone weighs far more than several grown men together. Their smooth gray surfaces are the result of decades, sometimes generations, of continuous use. Tiny grooves carved into the stone form an intricate pattern designed to guide grain steadily from the center toward the edges, where it becomes soft flour. These grooves are not random. They are the hidden craftsmanship of skilled stonemasons whose work few villagers ever noticed, yet whose precision fed entire communities. The miller kneels beside the lower stone. Running his fingertips gently across its surface, he searches for tiny imperfections. A loose fragment, an uneven ridge, a worn channel. Even the smallest flaw could affect the quality of the flour. Imagine how quiet the room feels. The loudest sound is not the machinery. It is the steady rhythm of water outside. The mill itself seems almost reluctant to disturb the peaceful morning. Nearby, several wooden bins wait patiently for the day's grain. They are empty now, but before long they will overflow with barley, rye, oats, and wheat brought by farmers from every direction. Each family has spent months tending those crops. Now they place their trust in the miller's careful hands. The responsibility is enormous. Grain was more than food. It represented hope, security, the promise that another winter might be survived. A poor harvest could bring hunger. A successful harvest brought quiet relief. The miller understood this better than almost anyone. He never viewed the sacks of grain as mere cargo. Each one represented countless hours beneath the sun, fields plowed by oxen, seeds scattered by hand, summer storms endured, autumn harvests celebrated with thankful hearts. Now all those months of labor arrived here, inside this quiet building beside the river. The lantern flickers gently as a cool breeze slips through a narrow window. Outside, the sky has changed again. The stars have almost disappeared. Only the brightest still linger above the western hills, fading slowly before the growing light. Birdsong begins one careful note at a time. A robin sings from a nearby ash tree. Moments later, another answers from the opposite bank. Soon dozens of voices weave together into a soft morning chorus. Nothing feels hurried. Nature wakes gradually. The medieval village follows the same gentle rhythm. Before opening the grain chute, the miller reaches toward a simple wooden shelf. There rests a small loaf of yesterday's bread, a wedge of hard cheese, and a clay mug filled with cool spring water. This modest breakfast is enough. He eats slowly, without distraction. The bread is dense and slightly coarse, made from flour much darker than the white loaves many people know today. Its flavor is earthy, honest, filling. Simple meals like this were common throughout medieval Europe. Luxury belonged to very few. For most people, nourishment mattered more than variety. As he finishes the last bite, sunlight finally touches the upper branches of the nearby trees. Golden light filters through morning mist, transforming countless droplets of dew into tiny sparkling jewels. The river suddenly appears brighter. Its surface reflects both the pale blue sky above and the warm golden glow spreading across the valley. The miller smiles quietly, not because anything extraordinary has happened, but because another ordinary day has begun exactly as it should. For people living in the Middle Ages, there was deep comfort in familiar routines. The river flowed, the wheel turned, the grain arrived. The bread was baked, life continued, and in that dependable rhythm, entire generations found a sense of peace that required no words. The quiet moment does not last for long. Far down the winding road, almost hidden by the pale morning mist, you notice the first signs of movement. It is not hurried, nor especially loud. Instead, it is the slow rhythm of wooden wheels rolling over packed earth. Imagine yourself stepping outside the mill. The cool air feels softer now as the first warmth of the rising sun begins to replace the night's gentle chill. Dew still clings to the grass, sparkling beneath the growing light like countless tiny crystals scattered across the fields. A farmer approaches with a sturdy wooden cart pulled by a patient ox. The animal walks with calm determination, its steady breathing forming little clouds that quickly disappear into the fresh morning air. Behind the cart rest several heavy sacks filled with grain. Months of careful work lie inside those simple bags. Seeds planted during spring, fields tended beneath summer sunshine, long afternoons spent removing weeds by hand, autumn harvests gathered before the weather could change. Every handful of grain represents hundreds of quiet hours that few people would ever see. The farmer raises one hand in greeting. The miller answers with a friendly nod. Words are few. There is no need for long conversation. They have known one another for many years. In medieval villages, familiar faces often remained part of everyday life for decades. Entire families grew old together, sharing seasons of abundance and seasons of hardship alike. Trust mattered deeply. A dishonest merchant might travel elsewhere. A careless craftsman could lose his reputation, but a dependable miller became someone upon whom every household relied. The heavy sacks are lifted carefully from the cart. Each one requires practiced strength. Grain is surprisingly heavy. Even after years of this work, the miller bends his knees carefully before lifting, allowing balance rather than force to carry the weight. Imagine placing your own hand upon one of the woven sacks. The rough fibers feel coarse beneath your fingertips. Tiny grains press gently against the cloth from within. You can almost smell the warm, earthy fragrance that escapes each time the sack shifts. Before anything is ground, the grain must be examined. The miller loosens the cord securing the first sack. He reaches inside and lets a stream of wheat fall slowly through his fingers. Golden kernels catch the morning sunlight. They appear dry, clean, healthy. He searches carefully for signs of moisture, mold, insects, or tiny stones that might damage the precious millstones. This inspection is not simply habit. It protects both the machinery and the people who will eventually eat the flour. One careless mistake could spoil an entire day's work. Nearby, another cart slowly arrives, then another. Soon the peaceful yard surrounding the mill begins filling with neighbors from nearby farms. No one seems impatient. Everyone understands that good work cannot be rushed. While they wait, villagers exchange quiet greetings. They ask about families. They discuss the recent weather. Someone remarks that the river has remained unusually steady this season. Another hopes the coming harvest will be generous. These conversations are gentle, ordinary, yet together they form the invisible threads that hold a community together. The mill is more than a workplace. It is also a meeting place. News travels here. Friendships grow here. Small worries are shared here. For many villagers, visiting the mill becomes one of the few opportunities to meet neighbors living beyond their immediate fields. Imagine listening from nearby. No one raises their voice. The loudest sounds remain those of nature. The flowing river, birds calling from distant hedgerows, the soft creaking of wagon wheels, occasionally the low, patient breath of an ox. The world feels wonderfully unhurried. Inside the mill, preparations continue. The miller carefully pours the first measured basket of wheat into the wooden hopper above the great stones. For a brief moment, nothing happens. Then gravity quietly begins its work. The grain slips downward in a gentle stream. The turning mechanism catches it, slowly, steadily, without waste. The great stones begin their patient task. A deep, comforting rumble fills the room. Not harsh, not overwhelming. Instead, it resembles distant thunder softened by rolling hills. You can almost feel the vibration beneath your feet. Tiny particles of fresh flour drift into the warm morning light, floating gently through the air before settling upon nearby beams, shelves, and the miller's worn leather apron. The scent changes almost immediately. Freshly ground wheat has a remarkable fragrance. Nutty, sweet, warm. It carries the promise of bread long before the first loaf is ever baked. For countless generations, this simple aroma greeted villages across Europe almost every morning. It meant nourishment. It meant another ordinary day beginning exactly as expected. The miller pauses once again, not because something is wrong, but because careful observation is the secret behind every successful craftsman. He listens. The stones sing in their own quiet language. The gears answer. The water wheel continues its endless turning outside. Everything remains perfectly balanced. Everything moves exactly as it should. And standing beside him, you begin to understand why medieval mornings felt less like the beginning of work and more like the continuation of an ancient rhythm that had never truly stopped. The river flowed yesterday. It flows today. It will flow tomorrow. Generation after generation, people came and went. Children became parents. Parents became grandparents. Kings rose and kingdoms faded. Yet here, beside the quiet watermill, each dawn arrived with the same gentle promise. A new day, honest work, and the comforting certainty that life, however challenging, continued one peaceful morning at a time. Tonight, dear friend, remain a little longer beside the old watermill, where the gentle rhythm of turning wood and flowing water has now become the heartbeat of an awakening village. The sun has climbed only a little above the eastern hills, yet its golden light already reaches across the fields, brushing the tops of barley and rye with a warm glow. The cool mist that wrapped the countryside before dawn begins to lift, revealing a landscape shaped by generations of careful hands. Imagine yourself standing beside the mill once again. The quiet road that only an hour ago lay empty now carries the slow procession of farmers arriving from every direction. Their carts are simple but sturdy, built from thick oak planks strengthened with iron bands. Wooden wheels creak softly as they roll over the packed earth, each sound blending naturally with the constant murmur of the nearby river. There is no rush, no shouting, no frantic movement. Everyone understands that this day will unfold at its own steady pace. A young farmer leads a pair of oxen toward the unloading area. The animals move with remarkable patience, their broad hooves pressing gentle impressions into the damp soil. Their coats glisten faintly beneath the growing sunlight, while tiny birds hop fearlessly nearby, searching for insects disturbed by the heavy footsteps. The farmer smiles as he reaches the mill. His face carries the bronze color of countless days spent beneath the open sky. His hands are rough, marked by years of planting, harvesting, repairing fences, and caring for animals. Though still young, They already tell the story of a life built upon quiet labor. The miller greets him warmly. No formal ceremony is needed. They know one another well. In villages like this, trust was earned slowly over many seasons. A man's reputation rested not upon wealth alone, but upon honesty, reliability, and the quality of his work. Imagine listening to their conversation. They speak softly about the weather. The river has remained generous this year. The wheat appears healthier than expected. A neighboring village may have suffered heavier rains. These are ordinary conversations. Yet for medieval families, such discussions carried genuine importance. Weather shaped every harvest. Harvest shaped every meal. And every meal shaped the future of the village. Nearby, another cart arrives carrying sacks of rye. An elderly couple walks beside it rather than riding. Their pace is unhurried, their expressions peaceful. They have followed this same road for decades, watching children grow into adults and seasons circle endlessly around their lives. The mill has witnessed every chapter. It has stood through hard winters, generous summers, years of celebration, and years of uncertainty. Its walls remember far more stories than any written chronicle ever could. Inside the mill, fresh flour continues to collect beneath the turning stones. A soft white dust settles upon wooden beams, barrels, and shelves, giving everything a faint, powdery glow. Sunlight streams through the narrow windows, illuminating tiny particles as they drift lazily through the air. For a moment, they resemble floating snowflakes caught in golden morning light. The scent inside grows even richer. Fresh wheat, dry oak, cool river water, warm lantern smoke. Together they create an aroma that countless medieval villagers would have recognized instantly. It is the scent of daily life, the scent of bread yet to be baked, the scent of another ordinary day beginning exactly as it has for generations. The miller carefully weighs each sack using a large balance scale. Accuracy matters, not because of strict laws alone, but because fairness keeps a village united. Every family deserves honest work. Every farmer deserves honest measurement. The great wooden beam of the scale rises and falls with quiet precision. Small iron weights are placed one by one until perfect balance is reached. No one argues. Everyone watches with calm confidence. Trust has been built here over many years. As the morning grows brighter, more voices fill the courtyard. Children accompany their parents, chasing one another carefully between the waiting carts. Their laughter rises briefly above the sounds of the river before fading once more into the peaceful rhythm of village life. For them, the mill is almost magical. The great wheel never seems to stop turning. The enormous stones transform hard grain into soft flour. Simple seeds become something entirely new. To young eyes, it feels almost like quiet wonder. Imagine standing near the open doorway. You feel the gentle warmth of the morning sun upon your shoulders while a cool breeze drifts from the river behind you. The sounds of the mill surround you without ever becoming overwhelming. Wood creaks softly. Grain pours steadily. Birds continue their cheerful songs. Somewhere beyond the fields, church bells ring gently, reminding the village that another day has fully begun. And through it all, the miller continues his work with calm concentration, knowing that every careful turn of the stones helps sustain the lives of everyone who calls this peaceful valley home. Imagine yourself lingering beneath the shade of an old willow tree that leans gently over the riverbank. From here, you can see nearly everything that happens around the mill without disturbing the peaceful rhythm of the morning. The line of waiting carts has grown a little longer. Some belong to prosperous farmers whose fields stretch across several gentle hills. Others belong to families who own only a few narrow strips of land scattered between their neighbors' farms. Yet here at the mill, Every sack of grain receives the same careful attention. The turning stones make no distinction. Neither does the river that powers them. One by one, each family waits patiently for its turn. Patience was woven deeply into medieval life. People waited for crops to grow. They waited for rain. They waited for seasons to change. Even the simplest daily tasks unfolded at the pace of nature rather than the speed of human wishes. As another wagon rolls into the courtyard, an elderly farmer removes his broad felt hat and wipes a few beads of perspiration from his brow. Although the morning is still pleasantly cool, lifting heavy sacks has already warmed his tired muscles. His granddaughter walks beside him, carrying a small wicker basket. Inside rests a simple breakfast wrapped in linen, dark rye bread, a piece of smoked cheese, several fresh apples gathered from the family orchard. The scent drifts gently through the cool air whenever the cloth shifts in the breeze. The little girl gazes toward the great waterwheel with wide eyes. She has seen it many times before, yet every visit feels just as fascinating. She watches each wooden paddle disappear beneath the flowing water before rising again, sparkling with countless tiny droplets that catch the morning sun. To her, the wheel seems almost alive, always turning, always working, always singing its quiet wooden song. The miller notices her curiosity and smiles kindly. Children were often welcome to observe from a safe distance, for every village understood that today's curious child might one day become tomorrow's skilled craftsperson. Learning rarely happened inside formal classrooms. Instead, knowledge passed quietly from experienced hands to younger eyes. A father showed his son how to sharpen a plow. A mother taught her daughter how to bake bread. A shepherd explained the habits of sheep. And here, beside the river, the miller demonstrated patience, careful observation, and respect for honest work. Inside the mill, another sack is emptied into the hopper. The grain flows in a smooth golden stream, not too quickly, not too slowly. The miller adjusts a small wooden lever with practiced precision. Too much grain would slow the stones. Too little would waste precious time. Finding the perfect balance requires constant attention. Imagine standing close enough to hear the grain itself. It creates a soft, rustling sound, almost like gentle rain falling upon dry autumn leaves. The millstones answer with their deep, comforting murmur. Above them, the wooden gears rotate steadily, each tooth meeting the next with remarkable accuracy. Though built by human hands, the machinery seems almost to possess its own quiet rhythm. Nothing is hurried. Nothing is forced. Every movement follows the peaceful flow of the river outside. As the hours pass, sunlight fills the valley completely. The morning mist has disappeared. Across the fields, small groups of workers can already be seen tending gardens, repairing fences, and guiding animals toward fresh pasture. Thin ribbons of smoke rise from cottage chimneys. Somewhere nearby, the village baker has begun preparing the first loaves using flour ground only hours before. Imagine the wonderful aroma slowly spreading through the streets. Warm bread, fresh flour, wood smoke, sweet butter melting upon a thick slice still warm from the oven. For many medieval families, few scents were more comforting. The miller pauses briefly to stretch his shoulders. Years of lifting heavy sacks have strengthened his body, yet they have also taught him the importance of careful movement. There is wisdom in working steadily rather than quickly. Many medieval crafts relied upon endurance instead of speed. The fastest worker was rarely the most respected. The most dependable often was. Outside, two neighboring farmers begin discussing the coming harvest. One believes the wheat will be especially plentiful if the weather remains mild. The other remembers a season many years earlier when unexpected storms flattened entire fields only days before harvest. Their conversation carries no anxiety, only quiet reflection. People who lived close to nature understood that uncertainty was simply part of life. Some years rewarded hard work generously, others demanded resilience. Yet every spring, seeds were planted once again. Every autumn, hope returned with the harvest. And every morning, the watermill stood ready to transform grain into flour, just as it had done for generations. Imagine resting for one final moment beside the flowing river. You hear the gentle splash beneath the wheel, the cheerful songs of swallows circling overhead, the distant laughter of children, the calm voices of neighbors greeting one another, the steady breathing of patient oxen waiting beside their carts. These ordinary sounds rarely appeared in the grand histories of kings and battles, yet together they formed the true music of medieval life. Quiet, steady, comforting. The kind of peaceful rhythm that reminds us history was not lived only inside castles or upon distant battlefields. Most people experienced it here, beside rivers, among neighbors, within simple villages, where every sunrise brought another chance to do honest work, share kind words, and continue the gentle routines that carried countless generations through the passing centuries. Tonight, dear friend, remain beside the old watermill just a little longer. The courtyard has settled into its gentle rhythm, and the morning now feels fully awake. Farmers continue to arrive, children wander curiously near the riverbank, and the steady murmur of the waterwheel never truly fades. If you close your eyes for a moment, it becomes difficult to imagine the village without that comforting sound. Picture yourself standing on the wooden bridge that crosses the narrow stream. Below your feet, clear water rushes beneath weathered oak planks, polished smooth by countless footsteps. Small trout dart between rounded stones, resting quietly on the riverbed, while patches of bright green moss cling to the edges of the old supports. Dragonflies skim gracefully across the water, their delicate wings flashing silver whenever they catch the sunlight. From this peaceful vantage point, you can clearly see the great water wheel turning with patient determination. Each paddle disappears beneath the flowing current before emerging once again, dripping countless sparkling droplets back into the river. The motion never appears hurried. Instead, it feels calm, deliberate, and dependable, as though the wheel itself has learned the quiet rhythm of the river over many generations. Imagine resting one hand upon the sturdy wooden railing. The cool breeze carries the scent of fresh water mixed with damp timber and the faint sweetness of crushed grain drifting from the mill. Somewhere nearby, wild mint grows along the riverbank, adding a gentle fragrance that blends naturally with the morning air. For the villagers, this place was far more than a building. It was the heart of everyday life. Long before factories filled cities with towering machines, the watermill represented one of humanity's greatest practical inventions. It transformed the endless movement of nature into useful work without requiring endless human effort. The river never demanded wages. It never grew tired. Day after day, season after season, it offered its quiet strength to anyone wise enough to guide its flow. The miller understood this better than anyone. He did not fight against the river. He worked with it. That simple idea lay at the center of medieval engineering. Rather than forcing nature to obey, people often learned how to cooperate with it. Water lifted hammers, turned wheels, powered bellows, ground grain, and in doing so, it eased the burden carried by countless working hands. Step inside the mill once more. The cool stone floor feels pleasantly firm beneath your boots. Sunlight streams through narrow windows, painting bright rectangles across the dusty floorboards. Tiny particles of flour float lazily through those beams of light like soft white snow drifting through warm air. Above you, The great wooden gears continue their slow dance. Each gear has been carefully carved by skilled craftsmen years before. Every tooth fits perfectly into the next. Their movement produces a deep, comforting rhythm. Clack, turn, whisper, clack, turn, whisper. There is something almost musical about the sound, not loud enough to disturb the peace, not quiet enough to disappear, simply present, steady, reliable. Imagine the remarkable knowledge required to build such a machine without electric tools, modern blueprints, or steel bearings. The carpenter relied upon careful measurements taken with simple wooden rulers. The blacksmith forged iron fittings by hand. The stonemason shaped enormous grinding stones with remarkable patience. Every craft depended upon another. The mill itself became a symbol of cooperation. One person's skill alone could never have created it. The miller walks slowly toward the center of the room. His experienced eyes move across every beam, every axle, every turning wheel. He notices details most visitors would never see, a tiny change in vibration, a faint difference in sound, a slight increase in resistance. These small observations allow problems to be corrected long before they become serious. Imagine performing the same task every morning for 20 years. Would the familiar sounds become invisible to you? Perhaps. Or perhaps, like the miller, you would become even more aware of every subtle difference. Experience often sharpens attention rather than dulling it. Outside, another gentle breeze ripples across the river. For just a moment, sunlight scatters across the moving surface like thousands of tiny golden coins. Swallows swoop gracefully overhead, catching insects that dance above the water. Nearby, reeds sway gently, producing a soft, rustling sound that blends beautifully with the flowing current. Nothing in this landscape feels wasted. Every movement belongs. Every sound contributes to the peaceful harmony surrounding the village. Back inside, the first fresh flower of the morning continues to gather inside large wooden bins. Its texture is remarkably soft. The miller lifts a small handful, allowing it to slip slowly between his fingers. He studies its color, its fragrance, its consistency. Satisfied, he smiles quietly. Another successful morning is unfolding exactly as generations before him would have hoped. The village may never notice these careful moments. Most people will simply enjoy warm bread later today. Yet hidden inside every loaf is the patient work of the river, the mill, the farmer, the baker, and the quiet hands that connected them all. And as the water wheel continues its endless turning beneath the brightening sky, you begin to understand why the old mill was never merely a workplace. It was the steady heartbeat of an entire community, quietly sustaining life one gentle rotation at a time. Imagine yourself remaining inside the mill just a little longer. The steady turning of the great wheel has become so familiar that you scarcely notice it anymore. Like the ticking of a gentle clock or the quiet rhythm of rainfall upon a distant roof, it settles naturally into the background, creating a peaceful sense of continuity. The miller often says very little while he works. Silence has become one of his oldest companions. During these quiet hours, there is no need to hurry conversation. The river speaks enough for everyone. He walks toward a narrow wooden staircase that climbs to the upper floor of the mill. The steps creak softly beneath his worn leather boots, each one polished smooth by decades of careful footsteps. Imagine following behind him, one hand resting lightly against the sturdy timber rail as warm morning sunlight streams through the small windows beside you. From above, the entire building reveals itself in a new way. You can see the massive gears turning together with remarkable harmony. One great wheel slowly drives another. That wheel moves a sturdy wooden shaft. The shaft gently rotates the upper millstone. Every movement depends upon the one before it. Should a single gear fail, the entire system would gradually fall silent. There is something quietly beautiful about this simple truth. No single part claims importance for itself. Every beam, peg, axle, and stone performs its own humble task, allowing the whole machine to function peacefully together. Perhaps villages were not so different. The farmer depended upon the miller depended upon the carpenter relied upon the blacksmith, the baker waited patiently for flour. Each ordinary person supported another, creating a community far stronger than any individual could become alone. Outside, the courtyard continues to fill with gentle activity. A young boy helps his father brush dust from the backs of their oxen after unloading another heavy cart. Nearby, an elderly woman shares a small basket of freshly picked pears with two neighboring children while they wait for their grain to be finished. Nobody appears impatient. Waiting simply belongs to the rhythm of the day. Imagine sitting upon a smooth wooden bench beneath the shade of an old oak tree. The bark feels rough beneath your fingertips. Leaves rustle softly overhead whenever the breeze drifts through their branches. Sunlight filters between them in dancing patches that slowly move across the ground. Not far away, the village blacksmith passes along the road, leading a sturdy horse fitted with newly repaired shoes. He raises a friendly hand toward the miller, who smiles and returns the greeting before continuing his work. These small exchanges happen almost without thought. Yet together they strengthen the quiet friendships that hold the village together year after year. Inside the mill, the fresh flour continues to gather. The miller scoops a little into a broad wooden bowl and studies it carefully in the sunlight. Its color tells him much, so does its texture. He rubs a pinch gently between his fingers. It feels soft, even, free from coarse fragments. Satisfied, he nods quietly. His careful adjustments earlier in the morning have produced excellent flour. For many villagers, this difference might pass unnoticed, but the baker will certainly know. Good flour creates lighter bread. Better bread nourishes families more completely. And so, the careful attention given here inside the mill quietly improves countless meals without anyone ever seeing the hidden work behind them. Imagine breathing deeply. The fragrance inside the building has changed again. Earlier, the air carried the scent of dry grain waiting to be ground. Now it is filled with the warm aroma of fresh flour mixed with seasoned oak, smooth stone, cool river water, and faint traces of lantern smoke that still linger beneath the rafters. It is a comforting smell, honest, simple, timeless. Outside, the sun climbs higher into a cloudless sky. The morning chill has almost disappeared. Butterflies drift lazily among patches of wildflowers growing beside the riverbank. Bees hum peacefully between blossoms, entirely unconcerned with the busy lives unfolding around them. The river itself glitters beneath the sunlight like a ribbon of moving glass. Its steady current never asks for praise. It simply continues onward, just as it has for centuries. The miller often thinks about that. Though he rarely speaks such thoughts aloud, years spent beside flowing water have taught him quiet lessons. Patience accomplishes more than haste. Steady effort outlasts sudden bursts of energy. Nature moves without anxiety, yet always reaches its destination. Perhaps that is why he never rushes. There is wisdom in matching the pace of the river. The village priest occasionally visits the mill during his morning walks. Not because he has grain to grind every day, but because the riverside path offers one of the most peaceful places in the valley. He pauses for a moment upon the bridge, listening to the familiar splash of the waterwheel before continuing toward the church. Travelers passing through the region often stop here as well. Some have never seen such a large watermill before. They watch with quiet amazement as flowing water performs work that would otherwise require many pairs of hands. To them, It feels almost miraculous. Yet for the villagers, it is simply another ordinary day. History often works that way. The greatest achievements become so familiar that the people living beside them scarcely notice their wonder. Imagine standing one last time beside the great turning wheel. Close your eyes. You hear the water slipping gently beneath the paddles. You hear wooden gears whispering deep inside the mill. You hear birds singing from nearby hedgerows. You hear distant laughter carried on the warm breeze. Nothing feels hurried. Nothing feels uncertain. Only the comforting rhythm of ordinary life, unfolding exactly as it has for generations. Here, beside the quiet river, the watermill continues its faithful work, not seeking glory, not asking for recognition, but simply serving its village with every slow, steady turn of the wheel. And as the sunlight grows warmer across the valley, you realize that history is often remembered through kings and battles, yet truly lived through places like this, where simple people, patient rivers, and honest work quietly shaped the world, one peaceful day at a time. Tonight, dear friend, stay beside the old watermill a little longer. The morning has now fully awakened, and while the great wheel continues its endless turning, something remarkable is beginning to happen. The flour that only moments ago rested as simple grains of wheat is about to begin an entirely new journey, one that will end on the wooden tables of nearly every family in the village. Imagine yourself lifting a small handful of freshly ground flour. It feels impossibly soft between your fingers, almost like cool silk. Tiny white particles drift lazily into the warm morning sunlight before settling upon the floor like delicate snow. Its fragrance is gentle and comforting, carrying warm notes of wheat, fresh earth, and the faint sweetness of the late summer fields where it first began its life many months ago. The miller smiles quietly as he fills another linen sack. Each careful scoop represents far more than ground grain. It represents breakfasts yet to be shared, children who will begin another day with full stomachs, travelers who will carry bread along dusty roads, families gathering together after long hours of work. In medieval Europe, bread was not simply food. It was the foundation of everyday life. For many people, nearly every meal included it in one form or another. Without bread, a village quickly felt the weight of uncertainty. With it, even the simplest supper offered comfort. Imagine following the miller as he carries the newly filled sack toward the waiting baker. The path between the mill and the bakery is short, winding gently past a cluster of timber-framed cottages whose shutters now stand open to welcome the fresh morning air. Smoke rises lazily from stone chimneys. Somewhere nearby, a rooster announces the passing of another hour. Children chase one another across a grassy common while older villagers sweep doorsteps or fetch water from the village well. The entire settlement has awakened, yet no one appears hurried. Life unfolds with quiet purpose. As you approach the bakery, the aroma reaches you long before the building itself comes fully into view. Warm wood smoke mingles with the unmistakable scent of rising dough. It is rich, comforting, familiar. Few fragrances have welcomed human beings across history as faithfully as the smell of fresh bread. The baker is already at work. His sleeves are rolled neatly above strong forearms dusted with flour. Years of kneading dough have strengthened his hands until every movement appears effortless. Without speaking, he accepts the fresh sack from the miller with a grateful nod. The two men understand one another well. One depends entirely upon the other. Without carefully milled flour, the baker's skill could accomplish very little. Without the baker, the flour would never become nourishing loaves. Imagine stepping inside the bakery. The warmth wraps gently around you. Unlike the cool stone walls of the riverside mill, this room glows with the pleasant heat of a great brick oven that has burned since before sunrise. The fire crackles softly behind its heavy iron door. Bundles of dry oak and ash wood rest neatly stacked against one wall, prepared days earlier to ensure the oven never grows cold during its busiest hours. On a broad wooden table lies a mound of fresh flour. The baker pours cool water into its center before adding a small amount of precious salt. Then, from a covered earthen bowl, he carefully stirs in a portion of yesterday's sourdough starter, a living mixture lovingly preserved from one day's baking to the next. There are no machines here, only experienced hands, slow patience, and generations of quiet knowledge passed from parent to child. Imagine watching the dough come together. At first it appears rough and uneven. Gradually, with steady kneading, it becomes smooth, elastic, and full of life. The baker presses gently with the heel of each hand before folding the dough back upon itself again and again. The rhythm is peaceful, almost meditative. Much like the turning water wheel, every movement follows a familiar pattern repeated thousands of times throughout a lifetime. Outside, the village continues its gentle morning routine. The blacksmith's hammer now rings faintly across the square. A shepherd guides sheep toward fresh pasture beyond the fields. Merchants begin arranging simple goods beneath small canvas awnings. Yet through every sound, the comforting aroma of baking bread slowly spreads along the narrow streets, drifting through open windows and across sunny gardens. Imagine how that scent must have felt after a difficult winter, or following weeks of exhausting harvest work. For countless medieval families, warm bread represented reassurance. Another day could begin. Another meal would be shared. Life, despite every hardship, continued. As the first loaves slide carefully into the glowing oven, the baker pauses for a quiet moment. He wipes flour from his hands and glances toward the open doorway, where the morning breeze carries the distant sound of the river still turning the great wheel beside the mill. Though separated by only a short walk, the two buildings remain forever connected. The river moves the wheel grinds the grain, the flour feeds the oven feeds the village, one peaceful rhythm flowing naturally into the next. And standing there beside the warm hearth, you begin to understand that the true miracle was never the machinery alone. It was the quiet cooperation of ordinary people, each performing a simple task with patience and care, creating something essential together. The first golden loaves are still some time away, but already the village knows they are coming. The aroma says so. The warmth says so. The steady heartbeat of the watermill says so. Another ordinary medieval day is unfolding exactly as it has for generations. One handful of flour, one glowing oven, and one humble loaf at a time. Imagine yourself remaining inside the warm bakery for a little while longer. The great brick oven radiates a gentle heat that settles comfortably into the room. The baker moves without haste, knowing that bread cannot be rushed. Fire has its own rhythm. Dough has its own patience. Every loaf asks for time before it is ready to nourish another family. The freshly kneaded dough now rests beneath clean linen cloths spread across the broad wooden table. For a while, it appears that nothing is happening. Yet beneath those simple coverings, thousands of tiny bubbles slowly form as the living sourdough begins its quiet work. Growth often happens silently. Just as wheat once ripened unnoticed beneath summer sunshine, the dough now rises without drawing attention to itself. Imagine placing your hand gently upon the linen. You can almost sense the warmth gathering inside. The baker smiles as he checks each loaf. Not every piece of dough is exactly the same. Some need a little more flour. Others require a few extra moments before they are ready. His experience allows him to notice small differences that most visitors would never see. Outside, the village has become pleasantly busy. Women carry woven baskets toward the marketplace. Children chase wooden hoops along narrow lanes. An elderly carpenter carefully planes a fresh oak board outside his workshop, filling the air with the clean scent of newly cut timber. Somewhere farther away, church bells ring softly through the valley. Their slow, peaceful notes drift across gardens, cottages, orchards, and fields before finally reaching the river where the old watermill continues its faithful work. The sound reminds everyone that morning has settled comfortably into the day. Imagine walking slowly through the village streets. The ground beneath your feet is firm, worn smooth by generations of travelers, farmers, merchants, and neighbors. Timber-framed cottages stand close together, their whitewashed walls glowing beneath the gentle sunshine. Flower boxes brighten many windows with simple herbs and colorful blossoms: lavender, rosemary, sage, mint. Their pleasant fragrances mingle naturally with wood, smoke, and fresh bread, creating an atmosphere that feels welcoming rather than grand. History often remembers magnificent castles, yet most medieval people spent their lives among places like these: simple homes, small gardens, quiet workshops, ordinary streets where familiar faces greeted one another each morning. As you continue walking, the village baker opens the heavy wooden door of his oven. A wave of warm air flows into the room. Inside, rows of golden loaves have begun to develop crisp brown crusts. The sight alone would have lifted many spirits. Bread represented security. A successful bake meant another day's meals could be shared around family tables. The baker reaches for a long wooden peel, carefully sliding each loaf forward to examine its color. The crust crackles softly as it cools. Tiny wisps of fragrant steam rise toward the rafters. Imagine breathing deeply. The aroma is rich beyond description. Nutty wheat, light smoke from seasoned oak, the gentle sweetness created during baking. It is one of humanity's oldest and most comforting scents. Even today, centuries later, the fragrance of fresh bread still carries the power to make a house feel like home. Soon villagers begin arriving with cloth-lined baskets tucked beneath their arms. No one crowds the doorway. There is no shouting. People wait their turn with quiet patience, exchanging friendly smiles while the baker finishes his work. An elderly widow receives a small round loaf. She thanks the baker warmly before placing it carefully inside her basket beside several onions and a wedge of hard cheese. Nearby, a young mother purchases 2 larger loaves. One will feed her family today. The other she plans to slice and dry, creating simple rusks that will last for several days. Nothing is wasted. Food requires too much effort to produce. Every crust has value. Every crumb deserves respect. The baker watches each customer leave with quiet satisfaction. His work began before dawn. The farmer planted the grain. The miller ground the flour. Now the bread begins its final journey into homes throughout the village. Imagine following one family as they return to their cottage. The father removes his boots at the doorway after a morning spent repairing fences. 2 children eagerly help set the simple wooden table. Their mother slices the still warm loaf with a well-used iron knife. Steam escapes gently from the soft center. She serves each family member a thick piece together with fresh butter and a bowl of vegetable pottage simmering over the hearth. No feast fills the table. No extravagant dishes appear. Yet there is quiet contentment. The meal is humble, wholesome, shared together. For many medieval families, moments like these formed the true richness of everyday life. As the family begins eating, conversation flows naturally. The children speak about seeing ducklings beside the river. Their father mentions repairing a gate before afternoon rain arrives. Their mother wonders whether herbs in the garden are ready for drying. Ordinary conversations, ordinary concerns. Yet these are the moments history rarely records, despite the fact that they shaped the lives of millions. Imagine stepping outside once more. The warm afternoon sun now shines across the valley. In the distance, you can still hear the steady splash of the water wheel. The mill has not stopped. More grain still waits to be ground. Tomorrow's bread has already begun its journey, and perhaps that is the quiet lesson hidden within this peaceful village. No single loaf appears by chance. It is the result of countless patient hands working together across many months. Farmers tending fields beneath changing seasons, millers rising before dawn to guide the turning stones, bakers shaping soft dough with practiced care, and families gathering gratefully around simple tables. As you take one final look toward the old riverside mill, its great wheel continues to turn with the same calm determination it has shown since sunrise. The river flows, the flour gathers, the ovens glow, the village is fed, and life, in all its quiet beauty, carries on exactly as it always has. One harvest, one loaf, and one peaceful day at a time. Tonight, dear friend, let us remain beside the old riverside mill, but instead of following a single day, imagine that an entire year quietly unfolds before your eyes. The water wheel never truly belongs to one season alone. It turns beneath the gentle blossoms of spring. It sings through the warmth of summer. It labors during the golden harvests of autumn, and it continues its faithful work beneath the silent snows of winter. The miller has watched these seasons come and go more times than he can easily count. He no longer measures time by calendars. Instead, he remembers years by rivers, by harvests, by the sound of birds returning after winter, by the first morning frost sparkling upon the fields. Imagine standing beside the mill on an early spring morning. The long winter has finally loosened its grip upon the valley. Small patches of snow still linger beneath the shadows of ancient oak trees, but everywhere else, new life begins to appear. Tiny white flowers push gently through the damp earth. Fresh grass paints the meadows with soft shades of green. The river, swollen by melting snow from distant hills, flows faster than it has for many months. Its voice grows louder, fuller, more energetic. The great water wheel turns with renewed strength, each paddle disappearing beneath the lively current before rising once more, shining beneath the gentle morning sun. The miller smiles as he watches the river. Spring always brings hope. The fields will soon be planted again. Children run barefoot through the soft grass for the first time since autumn. Lambs follow their mothers across nearby pastures. Birdsong fills every hedge and woodland. Even the air feels different. It carries the scent of damp soil, blooming wildflowers, and young leaves unfolding beneath warm sunshine. Imagine taking a slow walk along the riverbank. The earth feels soft beneath your boots. Tiny frogs leap into shallow pools as you approach. Dragonflies hover above the water, their delicate wings catching the light like tiny pieces of glass. Everywhere you look, the countryside seems to breathe again after its long winter sleep. The miller's work grows busier during these weeks. Farmers arrive not only with grain, but also with questions. Will the river remain strong? Will the coming summer be dry? Has the soil warmed enough for planting? The miller cannot answer every question, yet years spent beside the river have taught him to notice small signs. The height of the current, the color of the water, the songs of returning birds, the flowering of certain trees. Nature often whispers its intentions before speaking clearly. As spring slowly gives way to summer, the valley changes once again. Imagine the countryside beneath a brilliant blue sky. Golden sunlight stretches across fields that ripple gently beneath warm breezes. The days grow long, very long. Morning begins early, and twilight lingers long after the day's work is finished. The miller rises before sunrise, just as he always has. But now the air already feels pleasantly warm. The scent of fresh hay drifts across the valley. Bees hum lazily among colorful wildflowers growing beside the river. Children laugh as they splash in the shallows during the hottest afternoons. The waterwheel continues its endless turning, though the river now moves more gently than it did in spring. Its pace has become calmer, steadier, almost sleepy beneath the bright summer sun. Inside the mill, sunlight pours through every window. Warm golden beams illuminate clouds of flour that drift peacefully through the air. The wooden beams release the pleasant fragrance of sun-warmed oak. Fresh grain arrives almost every day as early harvests begin in nearby fields. Imagine resting for a moment beneath the shade of the great willow beside the mill. Its long green branches sway softly above your head. The river sparkles like polished glass. A kingfisher suddenly darts across the water, its brilliant blue feathers flashing brightly before disappearing downstream. Everything feels peaceful, unhurried, comfortable. For the miller, summer is a season of steady work rather than dramatic change. Each day resembles the one before it, yet he never grows bored. The river is never exactly the same. The sunlight falls differently each morning. The wind changes direction. The songs of birds shift as young fledglings learn to fly. Small differences quietly remind him that every day offers something new to notice. Perhaps that is one of the hidden gifts of slow living. When life moves gently, even ordinary moments become worthy of attention. The turning wheel, the drifting clouds, the fragrance of fresh grain, the laughter of children carried upon the breeze. These simple experiences fill the miller's days far more completely than grand adventures ever could. Soon, however, another season begins its quiet approach. The sunlight softens. Evening arrives a little earlier. The first leaves at the edge of the forest begin changing from green to shades of gold and amber. Autumn is coming, and with it, the busiest weeks the old watermill will see all year. Imagine yourself returning to the riverside mill a few weeks later. The bright greens of summer have slowly begun to soften into warm shades of amber, bronze, and gold. Morning air now carries a pleasant coolness that was absent only a short time ago, and delicate strands of mist once again drift above the river before the rising sun gently lifts them away. Autumn has arrived. For the miller, this is the busiest and perhaps the most satisfying season of the entire year. Across the valley, fields that waved with green life through spring and summer have ripened into seas of golden grain. Every breeze sends gentle waves across the wheat, making the hills appear almost like a quiet ocean shimmering beneath the pale autumn sky. Imagine walking slowly along one of those narrow paths between the fields. The heads of ripe wheat brush softly against your sleeves as you pass. Their dry stalks whisper together with every movement of the wind. Nearby, harvest workers move steadily through the fields with curved sickles in their hands. No one rushes. Harvest demands care. Each bundle is tied neatly before being stood upright to dry beneath the warm afternoon sun. The scent of ripe grain fills the countryside. It is warm, earthy, comforting. Mixed with the fragrance of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke, it creates an atmosphere unlike any other season. Soon the familiar road leading toward the mill becomes busier than ever. One wagon follows another. Some arrive before sunrise. Others continue until the last light of evening fades beyond the western hills. Every family hopes to have its grain safely milled before the colder months begin. The courtyard fills with quiet activity. Oxen patiently wait beneath spreading oak trees. Horses drink from wooden troughs beside the river. Children gather fallen acorns while their parents speak softly with neighbors they may not have seen since the previous harvest. Imagine standing beside the great wooden water wheel once more. Its steady turning has become almost hypnotic. The autumn river carries just enough strength to keep the machinery moving with perfect balance. Inside the mill, the air glows with golden afternoon light. Tiny clouds of flour float lazily through the sunbeams, creating a peaceful haze that softens every corner of the room. The miller works carefully from dawn until dusk, yet despite the long hours, he never allows himself to become careless. Each sack receives the same careful attention. Every adjustment of the stones remains deliberate. Good flour cannot be hurried. Outside, flocks of geese pass high overhead in graceful formations. Their distant calls echo gently across the valley. They remind everyone that winter is slowly approaching. The trees along the river begin releasing their leaves one by one. Golden leaves drift silently onto the water, floating beside the turning wheel before continuing downstream toward places unseen. Imagine watching one small leaf begin its quiet journey. It circles gently in a tiny whirlpool beside the mill. For a moment, it seems unwilling to leave. Then the current carries it onward. The miller often notices these little moments. Years beside the river have taught him that everything moves in its own time. The water never clings to yesterday. The seasons never linger forever. Every ending quietly becomes another beginning. As autumn gradually fades, the mornings grow colder. The first thin layer of frost appears upon wooden fences and grassy fields. When the miller opens the heavy oak door before dawn, he notices his breath rising gently into the crisp morning air. The river still flows, but more quietly now. Its banks are edged with delicate crystals of ice that sparkle beneath the pale sunrise. Imagine wrapping a thick wool cloak around your shoulders as you step outside. The cold feels sharp but clean. Every sound seems clearer. The creaking of the water wheel, the gentle splash beneath its paddles, the distant caw of a raven flying across the silent fields. Winter transforms the valley without taking away its beauty. Snow begins arriving softly, not all at once. Only a few gentle flakes at first, then another. Soon the rooftops of the village wear blankets of white. Tree branches bend beneath fresh snow. The familiar road to the mill grows quieter as fewer wagons travel during the coldest weeks. Yet the mill never truly sleeps. Families still need flour. Bread remains just as important during winter as it was in summer, perhaps even more so. Inside the mill, warmth gathers around the lanterns and the steady movement of the machinery. The scent of oak timber becomes richer in the cold air. Fresh flour feels almost warm compared with the winter wind outside. The miller pauses beside a small iron stove, warming his hands for a few peaceful moments before returning to work. Imagine looking through the frosted window toward the river. Steam rises gently where moving water refuses to freeze completely. The great wheel continues turning, more slowly than during spring, yet faithfully, dependably, exactly as it always has. The village trusts that sound. Children falling asleep at night often hear the faint murmur of the river in the distance. Travelers arriving after sunset look for the familiar silhouette of the mill to know they are nearing shelter. To many people, the Watermill has become something greater than a workplace. It has become a quiet symbol of continuity. Seasons change. Harvests rise and fall. Children grow into adults. Old friends become cherished memories. But the river continues its gentle song, and the wheel continues its patient turning, reminding everyone that life moves forward one peaceful day at a time. As another winter evening settles softly across the valley, the miller closes the great wooden door and hangs his lantern upon its familiar hook. Outside, snowflakes drift silently through the moonlight. Inside, the comforting fragrance of fresh flour still lingers in the air. The year has come full circle, and tomorrow, Before the village wakes once again, the miller will cross the little wooden bridge, unlock the old oak door, and begin another quiet day beside the faithful river. Tonight, dear friend, remain beside the old riverside watermill just a little longer. The seasons continue their gentle dance, but today our attention turns away from the machinery itself and toward the people whose lives quietly revolve around it. Imagine yourself standing beneath the broad branches of an ancient oak tree overlooking the mill. The morning sun has climbed comfortably into the sky, filling the valley with warm golden light. A soft breeze carries the familiar fragrance of fresh flower, damp river stones, newly cut timber, and the sweet scent of wildflowers blooming along the riverbank. The great water wheel continues its endless turning, steady, patient, unchanging. Yet around it, life constantly changes. The mill has become something much greater than a place where grain is ground. It is where neighbors meet, where friendships grow, where travelers pause to rest, where children satisfy their endless curiosity, where stories quietly pass from one generation to the next. Imagine watching the first visitors arrive, not with heavy wagons this time, but simply on foot. An elderly woman walks slowly along the riverside path carrying a woven basket filled with eggs, fresh herbs, and several apples gathered from her small orchard. She has no grain to grind today. Instead, she has come to visit her younger sister, whose family lives in a cottage just beyond the mill. As she pauses upon the wooden bridge, she smiles toward the miller. He returns the greeting with a gentle wave before continuing his careful work. Neither feels the need for many words. Some friendships grow so comfortably over the years that simple smiles become conversations of their own. Nearby, several children gather beside the edge of the river. They kneel carefully upon the grassy bank, watching tiny fish dart through the clear water. One little boy notices the turning water wheel and begins counting each paddle as it slowly disappears beneath the current. His younger sister soon joins him. Before long, they have forgotten the numbers entirely, becoming fascinated instead by the endless rhythm of the wheel itself. To them, it seems almost magical. Imagine sitting beside them for a moment. The river sparkles beneath the sunlight. Dragonflies hover gracefully above the reeds. A pair of white ducks glide quietly downstream, leaving gentle ripples that spread slowly across the calm surface. Everywhere you look, ordinary life unfolds without hurry. The miller notices the children watching. During a quieter moment, he invites them closer. Not too close to the machinery, of course, but near enough that they can safely observe the great gears turning inside. Their eyes widen with amazement. The enormous wooden wheels seem almost alive. Each tooth fits perfectly into the next. Every beam moves with quiet purpose. The children ask simple questions. Does the river ever stop? Who built the wheel? How heavy are the stones? The miller answers patiently. His voice is calm, gentle. There is no lecture, only stories shared in the relaxed rhythm of ordinary conversation. Perhaps, many years from now, one of these curious children will remember this peaceful morning and choose to become a carpenter, a miller, or an engineer inspired by the quiet wonder of this place. Imagine continuing your slow walk around the mill yard. A traveling merchant has stopped beside the road to allow his horse a short rest. Leather bags hang neatly from the saddle, carrying small goods gathered from distant towns. Fine needles, colorful ribbons, simple cooking pots, a handful of spices carefully wrapped in cloth. Though he has visited many villages, he always enjoys stopping beside this particular mill. The fresh water, the welcoming shade, the friendly people. Together they offer a pleasant break from long days upon dusty roads. He fills a wooden cup from the clear stream before sitting beneath the willow tree to enjoy a modest meal of dark bread and hard cheese. Nearby, two farmers exchange quiet advice about repairing wooden fences before winter arrives. A shepherd pauses briefly with his flock, allowing the sheep to drink from the river while he enjoys a friendly conversation with the miller. The subjects are wonderfully ordinary. The weather, the condition of the roads, a new calf born last week, an orchard expected to produce especially sweet apples this autumn. No one speaks of grand adventures. No one seeks attention. Yet these simple conversations form the true fabric of village life. History often celebrates kings who ruled for decades. But villages survived because ordinary people spoke kindly to one another, shared useful knowledge, and offered help whenever it was needed. As the afternoon sun grows warmer, the millyard becomes pleasantly lively without ever losing its peaceful atmosphere. A young mother arrives carrying a sleeping infant wrapped safely in soft wool. She sits upon a smooth wooden bench beneath the shade while waiting for her husband's grain to be finished. The gentle sound of the river soon lulls the child into an even deeper sleep. The steady turning of the water wheel becomes a quiet lullaby, just as it has for countless children born beside this valley through many generations. Imagine listening carefully. The sounds around you blend together almost perfectly. The splash of water, the whisper of turning gears, birdsong drifting from nearby trees, gentle laughter, friendly greetings. The rustle of willow leaves dancing in the breeze. Nothing competes for attention. Instead, each sound finds its own peaceful place within the music of the village. Standing beside the old mill, you begin to realize that history is not only remembered in castles or great cities. It also lives in quiet places like this, where neighbors gather beneath familiar trees, where children watch rivers with endless curiosity, and where ordinary people create extraordinary communities simply by sharing their days together. And as the patient water wheel continues its faithful turning beneath the warm afternoon sky, another peaceful chapter of village life quietly unfolds. Imagine yourself remaining beside the old watermill as the afternoon settles into its gentlest hours. The bright energy of morning has softened, and the village now seems to breathe with a slower, more peaceful rhythm. Sunlight filters through the branches of ancient elm and willow trees, painting shifting patterns across the ground while the river continues its endless song. The miller steps outside for a brief rest, not because his work is finished, but because every craftsperson understands the value of a quiet pause. He sits upon a weathered oak bench that has stood beside the mill for longer than anyone can clearly remember. Its smooth surface has been polished by countless generations of villagers who have rested there before returning to their own daily tasks. Imagine sitting beside him. Neither of you feels any need to speak. The silence is comfortable. Across the river, a group of ducks drifts lazily with the current, occasionally dipping beneath the surface before emerging with tiny ripples spreading behind them. A gentle breeze stirs the tall reeds, producing a soft, rustling sound that blends beautifully with the steady splash of the turning wheel. Before long, a familiar figure approaches along the riverside path. It is the village shepherd. His flock grazes peacefully in a nearby meadow while his faithful sheepdog keeps quiet watch from a shaded hill. The shepherd carries only a wooden staff and a small leather satchel containing his midday meal. He greets the miller with a warm smile. The two men have shared many conversations over the years. Sometimes they speak about the weather, sometimes about the condition of the river. Sometimes they simply enjoy each other's company without exchanging more than a few words. There is comfort in familiar friendships. Imagine listening as the shepherd quietly mentions that several lambs were born during the previous week. The miller nods with genuine happiness. Good news belongs to everyone in a village. The arrival of healthy animals means stronger farms, fuller markets, and hopeful seasons ahead. Nearby, the traveling merchant prepares to continue his journey. Before leaving, he carefully checks the straps securing his leather packs. Inside them rest simple treasures gathered from distant towns. Small brass buckles, fine linen thread, colorful glass beads, tiny bottles filled with fragrant oils. To the villagers, these objects carry a touch of the wider world beyond the valley. Children gather around his horse with wide, curious eyes. The merchant laughs gently and reaches into one of his bags, producing a small carved wooden whistle. He hands it to the youngest child with a cheerful smile. The child's face brightens instantly. Such simple acts of kindness often remained in memory far longer than expensive gifts. Imagine watching the merchant disappear slowly along the winding road. His wagon grows smaller with every turn until it becomes little more than a distant shape beneath the afternoon sun. The village grows quiet once more. Inside the mill, the steady work continues. Fresh sacks of flour stand neatly arranged against the stone wall, each marked carefully so every family receives exactly what belongs to them. The miller takes great pride in honesty. His reputation has been built not through grand speeches, but through years of dependable work. In medieval villages, trust was one of the greatest forms of wealth. Coins could be lost, harvests could fail, but a good name, earned patiently over many years, often became a family's greatest treasure. Imagine walking slowly toward the little bridge once again. The wooden planks creak softly beneath your feet. You pause halfway across, resting your hands upon the smooth railing. Below, the clear water reveals smooth stones resting peacefully beneath the surface. Small fish weave effortlessly between patches of waving green river grass. Dragonflies continue their graceful dance above the water, their delicate wings catching the golden afternoon light. Everything feels wonderfully unhurried. From somewhere beyond the nearby orchard comes the gentle laughter of children playing hide and seek among the apple trees. Their voices drift softly upon the breeze before fading once more into the quiet countryside. A grandmother sits beneath one of the trees, patiently weaving a small willow basket while keeping a loving eye on the children. Her experienced hands move almost without thought, over, under, around, pull gently, tighten carefully. Like the turning gears inside the mill, her work follows patterns learned through many years of practice. History often survives not only in books, but in hands that remember old skills. As the afternoon slowly begins leaning toward evening, golden light settles across the valley. The rooftops of the cottages glow warmly. Long shadows stretch gently across the fields. The river reflects the sky like polished glass, carrying drifting leaves toward distant places beyond the village. The miller knows that soon the final wagons of the day will return home. The baker will prepare for tomorrow's bread. Families will gather around their hearths to share simple suppers and quiet conversation. Tomorrow morning, before the first rooster greets the dawn, he will once again unlock the heavy oak door and begin the familiar rhythm all over again. Yet he never considers his life repetitive. The river is always changing. The seasons never stand still. Every sunrise paints the valley with different colors. Every visitor carries a new story. Every child asks different questions. There is endless variety hidden inside ordinary days. Imagine taking one final slow breath beside the old watermill. You smell fresh-cut hay drifting from distant fields. You hear the gentle creak of wooden gears turning faithfully inside the mill. You feel the cool river breeze against your face as swallows circle overhead. Nearby, neighbors exchange cheerful farewells before beginning the peaceful walk home. These quiet moments rarely appear in grand historical chronicles. Yet they are the true heartbeat of everyday medieval life. Not battles, not royal ceremonies, but ordinary people sharing kindness, honest work, familiar routines, and peaceful afternoons beside a river that never stopped flowing. And as the great water wheel continues its calm and faithful turning beneath the soft golden light of late afternoon, it quietly reminds us that the strongest communities were often built not by extraordinary events, but by countless ordinary days lived together with patience, trust, and gentle care. Tonight, dear friend, remain beside the old riverside watermill as the peaceful rhythm of another day continues. Until now, life has seemed wonderfully steady. The river has flowed faithfully, the great wheel has turned without complaint, and the village has moved gently from one familiar task to the next. Yet even in the quietest corners of medieval Europe, nature occasionally reminded people that every season carried its own gentle challenges. Imagine yourself standing upon the little wooden bridge just after sunrise. The air feels unusually heavy. Dark gray clouds drift slowly across the valley, softening the morning light until the countryside glows beneath a blanket of silver. The birds still sing, but their voices seem quieter today. The river carries a deeper tone than usual, not frightening, simply fuller, stronger. The miller notices immediately. After so many years beside this water, even the smallest change catches his attention. He walks to the riverbank and studies the current without speaking. The water moves a little faster than yesterday. Tiny branches float past more frequently. The surface ripples differently around the great wheel. To most visitors, these details would seem ordinary. To the miller, they are quiet messages from the river itself. Imagine kneeling beside him. The scent of damp earth rises from the bank. Fresh rain has fallen somewhere far upstream during the night, perhaps beyond the wooded hills that mark the edge of the valley. Though the village received only a gentle shower, distant streams have already begun feeding more water into the river. Nature often speaks long before people fully understand her intentions. The miller gently adjusts the wooden sluice gate that directs water toward the wheel. He moves slowly. There is no panic. Experience has taught him that calm decisions almost always serve better than hurried ones. The gate shifts with a low wooden groan. Immediately, part of the current diverts harmlessly back toward the river. The wheel continues turning, steady, balanced, safe. Imagine hearing the gentle rain begin once again. Not a storm, only soft drops falling upon the roof. Tap, tap, tap. The sound blends beautifully with the flowing river and the slow heartbeat of the machinery inside the mill. For a few peaceful moments, the entire valley seems wrapped in a comforting blanket of rain. Inside, the lantern burns a little brighter against the dim morning light. The scent of wet timber fills the room, mixing with fresh flour and cool stone. The miller runs his hand along one of the great oak beams. Moisture is the quiet enemy of every wooden building. Too much dampness can swell the timber. Too little can leave it dry and brittle. Every season demands its own careful attention. Imagine following him as he climbs the narrow staircase to inspect the upper gears. Each step creaks softly beneath his boots. Above, the machinery turns faithfully. He listens. Clack, whisper, turn, splash. The familiar rhythm continues exactly as it should. Satisfied, he brushes away a little dust before returning downstairs. Outside, the rain has already begun to ease. Clouds slowly drift apart. Thin shafts of sunlight break through, touching the wet grass until thousands of tiny droplets sparkle like scattered diamonds. Children emerge from their cottages almost immediately, delighted to jump over small puddles forming beside the road. To them, rain is another adventure. To the farmers, it is a blessing. To the miller, it is something to be understood and respected. Imagine taking a slow walk beyond the mill. The fields appear greener than yesterday. Every leaf glistens beneath the fresh moisture. A robin lands upon an old fence post and shakes tiny droplets from its feathers before beginning its cheerful morning song. Life continues almost exactly as before, only the air smells cleaner, fresher, filled with the rich fragrance of rain-soaked soil and growing wheat. The miller returns to his work with quiet confidence. Challenges like these have always been part of life beside the river. Some mornings bring stronger currents. Others bring fallen branches carried downstream. Occasionally, a wooden paddle must be repaired or a gear carefully adjusted. None of these tasks feel extraordinary. They are simply another part of caring for the mill that has faithfully served the village for generations. Imagine standing beside the turning wheel once more. Rainwater drips gently from every paddle as it rises from the river. The wheel glistens beneath the returning sunlight. It almost seems refreshed, renewed. The same could be said for the valley itself. Every shower nourishes tomorrow's harvest. Every careful repair protects another season of honest work. Every quiet challenge becomes another lesson patiently learned. Perhaps that is why the miller never fears small difficulties. He understands something the river has been teaching for centuries. Strength is rarely found in resisting every change. Often, true strength comes from adjusting gently, remaining patient, and continuing forward one steady turn at a time. As the last gray cloud drifts beyond the hills, warm sunlight once again fills the peaceful valley. The water wheel turns, the river sings, the village breathes easily, and another ordinary medieval morning carries on with quiet grace, just as it always has. Imagine yourself remaining beside the old watermill as the gentle rain becomes nothing more than a memory. The clouds continue their slow journey toward the distant hills, leaving behind a sky washed clean and bright. Fresh sunlight spreads across the valley, touching every rooftop, every meadow, and every bend of the quiet river with a soft golden glow. The world seems to take a deep, peaceful breath. Tiny droplets still cling to the blades of grass, sparkling like countless little stars beneath the morning sun. Along the riverbank, wildflowers lift their colorful petals once more, while bees cautiously return to their patient work, moving from blossom to blossom as though nothing had disturbed the gentle rhythm of the day. The miller steps outside carrying a simple wooden rake. A few small branches and leaves have gathered near the water wheel during the rain. They are not dangerous, simply part of living beside a river. With slow, practiced movements, he clears them away, allowing the current to flow freely once again. Imagine helping him for a moment. The wood feels smooth beneath your hands, polished by years of careful use. The cool water splashes softly against the riverbank as the branches drift downstream, beginning a quiet journey toward places neither you nor the miller will ever see. Soon, the familiar sounds of village life return. A farmer leads 2 sturdy oxen across the little bridge. Their hooves make gentle, hollow sounds upon the weathered planks. Behind them, a wooden cart carries several sacks of grain harvested only a few days before. The farmer tips his cap toward the miller with a cheerful smile. "There was just enough rain," he says softly. "The fields will be grateful." The miller nods. He knows the truth of those words. The same rain that briefly quickened the river has also refreshed the wheat, the barley, the gardens, and the orchards throughout the valley. Nature rarely gives without also asking for care. Imagine walking a little farther along the riverside path. The scent of wet earth still lingers in the air. It mixes with fresh grass, moss-covered stones, and the faint sweetness of blooming clover growing beside the stream. A pair of rabbits emerges cautiously from beneath a hedge, pausing only for a moment before disappearing into the tall grass. Nearby, a squirrel scampers along the branch of an ancient oak, carrying an acorn almost too large for its tiny paws. Life has quietly resumed its familiar rhythm. Inside the mill, the great stones continue their patient work. Fresh grain pours steadily from another farmer's sack. The miller adjusts the flow with practiced hands, listening carefully to the comforting murmur of the machinery. Every sound tells him something. A smooth hum means the stones are properly balanced. A sharper scrape would suggest they need attention. Years of experience have trained his ears as much as his eyes. Imagine standing beside one of the narrow windows. Through it, you can see the river reflecting patches of blue sky between drifting white clouds. Swallows dart effortlessly above the water, chasing tiny insects that dance in the warm afternoon air. Their swift movements contrast beautifully with the slow, dependable turning of the wheel. One speaks of energy, the other of patience. Both belong perfectly within this peaceful landscape. As the day continues, a familiar visitor arrives. It is the village carpenter. He has come not because anything is broken, but because he enjoys inspecting the mill from time to time. Together, he and the miller examine the wooden beams, the axle, and the great paddles of the wheel. They run careful hands across the seasoned oak, searching for the smallest signs of wear. Preventing problems has always been wiser than waiting for them to grow. The carpenter smiles with satisfaction. The old wheel still has many good years ahead, he says quietly. The miller returns the smile. There is comfort in hearing those words. This mill has served the village through changing seasons, changing generations, and changing times. With thoughtful care, it may continue serving many more. Imagine sitting beside the river as afternoon slowly begins to fade. The sunlight grows softer now, turning the surface of the water into shimmering ribbons of gold. A cool breeze drifts down from the hills, carrying the scent of pine forests beyond the valley. Somewhere in the distance, a cowbell rings gently as a herd makes its slow journey home. The village begins preparing for evening. Smoke curls lazily from cottage chimneys. Children are called indoors with warm voices. The baker closes his shop after another successful day. The blacksmith lets the final glow of his forge fade into quiet embers. Yet the watermill continues. Even as the valley grows still, the river keeps flowing beneath the old wooden wheel. The miller completes one final inspection before closing the great oak doors. He places a hand upon the weathered frame for a brief moment, almost as though thanking the old building for another faithful day. Then he hangs his lantern beside the entrance. Its warm light flickers gently against the stone walls. Imagine taking one last look across the peaceful valley. The challenges of the morning have already become part of yesterday's story. The river is calm once more. The fields are refreshed. The mill stands strong. And the people of the village return to their homes with grateful hearts, knowing that tomorrow will bring another ordinary day filled with familiar work, quiet conversations, and the comforting rhythm of life beside the faithful river. As evening settles softly over the countryside and the first stars begin to appear above the darkening hills, the old water wheel continues its slow, steady turning. Never hurried, never weary, simply carrying the village gently forward, one peaceful day after another. Tonight, dear friend, let us remain beside the old riverside mill just a little longer, for the busiest hours of the day are slowly drawing to a close. The bright afternoon has softened into the warm, golden light that only evening can bring. Long shadows stretch gently across the fields, and the entire valley seems to slow its breathing, preparing for another peaceful night. Imagine yourself standing beside the familiar wooden bridge. The river still flows with quiet confidence beneath your feet, carrying the reflections of drifting clouds that have begun to blush with shades of amber and pale pink. The water wheel turns as faithfully as ever, but somehow its steady rhythm feels even gentler in the fading light. The day's work is nearly finished. One final wagon slowly approaches the mill. Its wooden wheels creak softly along the well-worn road, while two patient oxen pull the load without complaint. The farmer walking beside them removes his hat as he greets the miller. There is no urgency now. Tomorrow will bring another day. Whatever remains unfinished can patiently wait until sunrise. The miller welcomes the farmer with the same quiet kindness he has shown every visitor throughout the day. Together they unload the final sacks of grain. Each one feels a little lighter than those carried during the busy harvest weeks, yet they are handled with exactly the same care. Experience has taught the miller that every family's harvest matters. Whether a wagon carries 20 sacks or only 2, each represents months of patient labor beneath changing skies. Imagine stepping inside the mill one more time before night arrives. The evening light enters through the narrow windows in long golden beams, illuminating tiny clouds of flour that drift lazily through the still air. The great wooden gears continue their familiar dance. Clack, turn, whisper, clack, turn, whisper. The sound has become so comforting that it almost resembles a gentle heartbeat echoing through the old building. The miller begins cleaning his workspace. He brushes scattered flour into neat piles before sweeping the smooth stone floor with a simple birch broom. Every tool is returned to its proper place. Every wooden scoop hangs neatly upon its peg. The grinding stones are carefully inspected one final time before tomorrow's work. These quiet routines have remained almost unchanged for decades, perhaps even longer. Imagine helping him dust a broad oak table. The wood bears countless tiny marks left by years of honest work. Each scratch tells a forgotten story, a busy harvest, a difficult winter, a joyful season of abundance. Though no one remembers exactly when each mark appeared, together they form the history of the mill itself. Outside, the village slowly begins preparing for supper. Thin ribbons of blue-gray smoke curl upward from cottage chimneys, carrying the comforting scent of burning oak and beech wood. Somewhere nearby, the baker removes the final loaves from his cooling racks. Their warm aroma drifts gently across the evening air, mingling with the fragrance of fresh hay and distant apple orchards. Imagine strolling slowly along the narrow village lane. Open windows reveal families gathering around simple wooden tables. Children laugh as they help place bowls of vegetable stew, fresh bread, and small wedges of cheese before eager hands. Candles are not yet needed. The last gentle light of day still fills each little room. The conversations you hear are wonderfully ordinary. A father speaks about repairing a gate tomorrow morning. A grandmother recalls a harvest from many years ago. A young boy excitedly describes the kingfisher he spotted beside the river. A little girl proudly announces that she helped feed the chickens without dropping a single handful of grain. These are the stories that never appear in royal chronicles, yet they are the stories that truly filled medieval life. Imagine returning to the riverside. The miller has finished his final inspection. He steps outside and quietly closes the heavy oak doors. Their deep wooden thud echoes softly across the courtyard before fading into the evening air. He places a sturdy iron bar across the entrance, not out of fear, but simply to protect the mill until morning. The river, however, never closes. It continues flowing beneath the bridge exactly as it always has. The waterwheel slows slightly now that the sluice gate has been partially lowered for the night. It still turns, only more gently, more slowly, almost as though it too is preparing for sleep. The miller walks toward the little bridge one last time. He pauses halfway across, resting both hands upon the smooth railing polished by generations of villagers. Imagine standing quietly beside him. Neither of you speaks. There is no need. Before you stretches the peaceful valley. Fields glow beneath the golden light of sunset. Birds make their final flights toward hidden nests among the trees. A pair of swans glides gracefully across a calm bend in the river, leaving long silver ripples behind them. Far beyond the village, the forest has already begun disappearing into soft blue shadows. The miller takes a slow, contented breath. His body is pleasantly tired. His hands are rough from years of lifting grain and tending machinery. yet his heart is peaceful. Today the river flowed well. The wheel turned faithfully. The flour was fine. The villagers carried home what they needed. It has been a good day. Perhaps not an extraordinary one, but the happiest lives are often built from countless ordinary days lived with care. Imagine the first evening star appearing above the eastern hills. Its tiny light grows brighter as the sky deepens from gold into soft shades of lavender and blue. One by one, other stars quietly join it. Soon, the entire valley begins settling beneath a peaceful blanket of twilight. The miller turns toward home. Tomorrow, before dawn paints the sky once again, he will return to unlock the old oak door and greet the faithful river. But for now, evening belongs to rest, to family, to warm bread shared beside the fire, to quiet gratitude. And as you linger beside the gently turning wheel beneath the first stars of night, you realize that the greatest gift this little medieval village possesses is not wealth, nor power, nor fame. It is something far quieter, the comfort of familiar places, the kindness of familiar faces, and the peaceful certainty that tomorrow, just like today, the river will continue its endless song. Imagine yourself remaining on the little wooden bridge after the miller has quietly begun his walk home. The valley has entered that beautiful hour when day and night gently meet. The sky above is painted with soft layers of fading gold, delicate rose, and deepening blue. One by one, the brightest stars awaken overhead, while the last rays of sunlight rest upon the tops of the ancient oak trees before quietly disappearing beyond the western hills. The river seems calmer now. Its surface has become almost perfectly smooth, disturbed only by the slow turning of the water wheel and the occasional circle made by a fish rising briefly beneath the evening sky. If you listen carefully, the sounds around you have changed. The cheerful conversations of the afternoon have faded. The wagons have all returned home. The village lanes have grown peaceful. Now you hear only the gentle splash of flowing water, the soft whisper of leaves moving in the evening breeze, and somewhere in the distance, the quiet call of an owl greeting the coming night. Imagine taking a slow walk toward the cottages. Warm light glows through small leaded windows. Inside each home, families have gathered around their hearths. Simple suppers are being shared. Wooden bowls filled with vegetable pottage sit beside fresh bread baked earlier that day. Small wedges of cheese, onions, and preserved apples rest upon rough wooden tables polished by years of daily use. The meals are modest, yet they carry a quiet richness, not because of expensive ingredients, but because they are shared together. In one cottage, a grandfather slowly tells a story to his grandchildren. He speaks of winters long ago when the river froze so completely that children carefully crossed it on foot. Whether every detail is perfectly true hardly matters. The children listen with wide eyes, wrapped in warm blankets as the fire crackles gently nearby. Stories have always been another kind of nourishment. They feed memory. They carry wisdom. They help one generation gently place its experiences into the hands of the next. Imagine standing outside for a moment. Through an open window you hear quiet laughter. From another cottage comes the gentle sound of someone humming a simple melody while washing wooden bowls after supper. The tune drifts into the cool evening air before blending with the steady murmur of the river. Nothing feels hurried. Even the night arrives patiently. Nearby, the village baker finishes sweeping the floor of his bakery. Only a faint warmth remains inside the great brick oven. Tomorrow, long before sunrise, he will return to light the fire once again. For now, he carefully covers the remaining dough that will continue resting overnight. Bread, like the river, follows its own gentle rhythm. Some work is done by human hands. Some is done quietly while people sleep. Imagine walking once more toward the old watermill. Moonlight has begun touching the roof with a pale silver glow. The heavy oak doors remain closed, but the familiar scent of fresh timber and flour still lingers around the building. The great water wheel has slowed almost to a peaceful crawl. Each paddle enters the dark water with barely a sound before rising again beneath the soft moonlight. The river never truly sleeps. It simply becomes quieter. The same could be said for the village. Beyond the cottages, sheep rest together upon the hillside. Their thick wool keeps them warm beneath the cool night air. The village dog curls comfortably beside a stable door after faithfully watching over the day's activities. Cats wander silently between gardens, their soft paws making no sound upon the earth. Even the birds have settled into their hidden nests among the trees. Only the occasional chirp of crickets now fills the quiet spaces between the sounds of flowing water. Imagine sitting beneath the great willow tree beside the mill. Its long branches sway gently overhead, casting graceful shadows across the grass. The moon climbs higher into the clear sky. Its reflection dances softly upon the river below. You can almost believe that time itself has slowed. Perhaps this is why places like this remain so comforting across the centuries. They remind us that life does not always need to rush forward. Some of its greatest joys are found in repetition. The same bridge crossed each morning, the same river flowing each evening, the same familiar faces sharing kind greetings day after day, the same wheel turning faithfully through every season. The miller often says very little about such things. Yet if someone were to ask him what makes a good life, he might simply gesture toward the quiet valley before him, toward the fields, toward the cottages, toward the river, toward the old mill. Everything important is already here. Honest work, peaceful rest, good neighbors, warm bread, flowing water, changing seasons, enough to fill a lifetime. Imagine remaining there until the moon stands high above the valley. Silver light now covers the rooftops, the bridge, and the quiet road leading toward distant villages beyond the hills. The water wheel continues its slow and faithful turning beneath the stars, just as it has for countless nights before. Long after today's conversations have faded into memory, long after the lanterns inside the cottages have been gently extinguished, long after every child has fallen asleep beneath thick wool blankets, the river still sings its ancient song. It asks for nothing. It promises nothing. It simply flows onward, carrying with it the peaceful rhythm that has guided this little village through generation after generation. And as you quietly leave the bridge behind and begin the gentle walk beneath the moonlit sky, you carry with you the same calm certainty that the villagers have always known. Morning will come again. The first birds will sing. The miller will unlock the heavy oak door. The baker will light his oven. The farmers will greet the sunrise. And the faithful old watermill, standing beside its beloved river, will welcome another ordinary day. One more quiet chapter in the endless story of medieval life. Tonight, dear friend, let us leave the quiet riverbank for a little while and follow the miller home. The water wheel continues its slow turning beneath the moonlight, but another peaceful chapter of medieval life is just beginning inside the warm cottages that rest beneath the dark winter sky. Imagine yourself walking along the narrow village path. Fresh snow has fallen during the afternoon, covering the ground with a soft white blanket that muffles every footstep. The familiar road, busy only hours ago with farmers and wagons, now lies peacefully still. Above you, countless stars sparkle across the clear night. The moon hangs low over the valley, casting a gentle silver light upon the frozen fields. Every rooftop wears a thick layer of snow, and the branches of ancient oaks glisten with delicate crystals that shimmer whenever the breeze stirs them. The air is wonderfully crisp. Each slow breath carries the clean scent of snow, pine trees, and wood smoke rising from cottage chimneys. Ahead, the miller's home glows warmly through its small leaded windows. A lantern hangs beside the sturdy oak door, its golden light dancing gently against the snow. Imagine brushing the snow from your boots before stepping inside. Immediately, a comforting wave of warmth surrounds you. The cottage is simple. Its walls are built from heavy oak beams filled with pale plaster. The ceiling is crossed by thick wooden rafters darkened from many winters of hearth smoke. Everything feels modest, yet everything feels welcoming. At the center of the room burns a cheerful fire. Oak logs crackle softly upon the hearth, sending gentle warmth into every corner of the house. Above the flames hangs a sturdy iron pot where vegetable pottage slowly simmers. The fragrant steam fills the room with comforting aromas. Carrots, leeks, barley, cabbage. A handful of herbs gathered during summer and carefully dried before winter arrived. Nothing extravagant, simply nourishing food prepared with patience. Imagine sitting upon a sturdy wooden stool near the fire. The warmth slowly reaches your hands after the cold walk from the mill. Outside, the wind whispers softly around the cottage walls, but inside only peace remains. The miller's wife slices a fresh loaf of dark rye bread baked earlier that morning. Its crust crackles gently beneath the knife. The inside remains soft and warm. She places thick slices upon a wooden board beside fresh butter stored in a cool stone cellar. Soon the family gathers. Their conversation is quiet, comfortable. Nobody rushes through the meal. The miller's young son proudly describes helping carry kindling for the fire. His daughter smiles as she speaks about collecting eggs before the snowfall began. Their mother listens patiently, occasionally laughing as the children remember small adventures from the day. The miller speaks very little. After long hours beside the turning wheel, he enjoys simply listening. Imagine the gentle sounds filling the room. Wood popping softly in the fireplace, bowls resting upon the table, the quiet clink of wooden spoons, the peaceful murmur of familiar voices. Outside, the wind carries tiny snowflakes against the shutters with the softest whisper. Inside, time seems almost to stand still. After supper, the dishes are washed in warm water drawn earlier from the village well. Nothing is wasted. The remaining bread is carefully wrapped in linen. The fire is gently stirred to keep glowing through the evening. Even these ordinary household tasks unfold without hurry. In medieval villages, evenings were precious. There were no bright electric lights to stretch the day far into the night. People naturally followed the rhythm of daylight. Winter evenings invited rest, reflection, family. Imagine the miller's wife taking a basket of wool beside the fire. Patiently, she spins thread using a simple wooden spindle. Its quiet turning almost echoes the familiar movement of the water wheel beside the river. Round and round, slowly, steadily. The children watch for a while before becoming sleepy. One curls comfortably beside the family dog resting near the hearth. The faithful animal barely opens one eye before settling back into peaceful sleep. Outside, snow continues falling. Softly, silently, the entire valley grows brighter beneath its white covering. Moonlight reflects from the fresh snow until even the darkest corners seem touched by silver. Imagine looking through the little window. Across the frozen fields, you can just make out the silhouette of the old watermill. Though distant now, it still stands proudly beside the river. The great wheel has almost stopped for the night. Only the gentle current beneath the ice keeps it moving with the faintest motion. It rests, just as the village rests. Yet everyone knows tomorrow morning it will awaken once more. The miller's daughter quietly opens a small wooden chest. Inside rests a carefully folded wool blanket sewn by her grandmother many years ago. Every stitch was placed by hand. Every pattern carries memories of family members whose voices now exist only in stories. Objects like these were treasured, not because they were expensive, but because they carried love from one generation into the next. Imagine the fire burning lower as the evening grows late. The warm orange glow dances gently across the timber walls. Shadows move slowly across the ceiling beams. The room grows quieter. The children have fallen asleep beneath thick blankets. The family dog sighs contentedly. Only the soft crackle of glowing embers remains. The miller rises quietly and places one final oak log upon the fire. He pauses beside the window for a moment, gazing toward the snowy valley. The river cannot be seen from here, yet he knows it continues, flowing beneath the winter sky. Tomorrow it will greet him again. Tomorrow the wheel will turn. Tomorrow fresh grain will become flour. Tomorrow another peaceful day will begin. There is comfort in that certainty. Imagine taking one final slow breath as the warmth of the hearth surrounds you. The scent of burning oak, fresh bread, dried herbs, clean wool, and the faint trace of flour that still clings to the miller's coat after another honest day's work. These simple comforts, shared within a humble cottage beneath a snowy medieval sky, remind us that true richness was often measured not by gold or grand halls, but by warmth, family, honest labor, and peaceful evenings spent together beside a glowing fire. Imagine yourself remaining inside the little cottage as the fire settles into a bed of glowing embers. The lively flames that danced across the oak logs only a short while ago have grown quieter now. Instead of bright flashes, the hearth offers a deep, gentle glow that fills the room with warm shades of amber and gold. Every beam overhead catches the flickering light, making the old timber seem almost alive. Outside, winter has wrapped the valley in complete stillness. Snow continues falling with remarkable patience. Each tiny flake drifts silently through the moonlight before settling upon rooftops, fences, and the sleeping fields beyond the village. The world has become softer, quieter, more peaceful. Imagine listening carefully. The crackling fire is now the loudest sound inside the cottage. Every so often, a glowing log shifts gently, sending a shower of tiny sparks upward before they disappear into the dark chimney. The sound is comforting rather than surprising. It reminds everyone that warmth still fills the house while the cold waits patiently outside. The miller's wife quietly folds several wool blankets before placing them inside a cedar chest near the wall. The pleasant scent of cedar wood rises as the heavy lid opens. It mixes with the fragrance of beeswax candles, dried lavender hanging from the ceiling beams, and the faint aroma of freshly baked bread that still lingers from supper. Imagine walking slowly around the room. Though modest, every object has earned its place. A smooth wooden spoon carved many years ago, an iron kettle blackened by countless evenings above the fire, a small clay jug holding fresh water drawn from the well, a woven basket filled with onions stored carefully for winter, a bundle of garlic hanging beside dried herbs. Nothing is decorative simply for appearance. Everything serves a purpose. Yet together they create a quiet beauty born from usefulness and care. The miller settles into his favorite chair beside the hearth. It is not grand. Its arms have become polished smooth through years of steady use. He stretches his tired hands toward the warmth. The rough skin upon his palms tells the story of countless sacks lifted, wooden gears repaired, and long days spent beside the turning stones. These hands have shaped little beyond flour. Yet through that simple work, they have helped feed an entire village. Imagine how satisfying that must feel. Not fame, not fortune, simply knowing that today's labor helped neighbors share warm bread around their family tables. Sometimes the greatest achievements leave the quietest footprints. Across the room, the children sleep peacefully beneath thick wool blankets. The youngest hugs a small cloth doll stitched lovingly by her grandmother. Her older brother dreams quietly beside the family dog, whose slow breathing matches the calm rhythm of the glowing fire. Even in sleep, the cottage feels alive with gentle comfort. Outside, the village has become wonderfully silent. Only the occasional hoot of an owl drifts across the snowy fields. Far away, somewhere beyond the frozen meadows, a fox leaves delicate tracks across untouched snow before disappearing into the shelter of the dark forest. The river continues flowing beneath a thin layer of ice along its edges. Though hidden by darkness, the faithful Watermill still stands beside it. Imagine looking through the frosted window one last time. The moon now hangs high above the valley. Its silver light touches the roof of the old mill, the wooden bridge, and the winding road leading toward distant villages. Everything appears peaceful, almost timeless. The miller often wonders how many generations have looked upon this same moon. His father surely did. His grandfather before him. Perhaps centuries from now, another miller, or another traveler, will stand beside the same river, listening to the same gentle current flowing beneath another quiet winter sky. That thought brings him comfort. Life changes. People come and go. Children grow older. Seasons pass. Yet some things continue faithfully. The stars, the river, the turning of the seasons, the simple kindness shared between neighbors. Imagine the miller's wife quietly extinguishing one of the candles. The room grows slightly darker. Only the fire now illuminates the cottage. Its warm glow dances softly across the sleeping faces of the family. The miller rises one final time to place another small log upon the embers, ensuring warmth will remain through the coldest hours before dawn. He checks the sturdy wooden door, fastens the iron latch, offers a quiet smile toward his family, then settles once more into peaceful silence. No words are needed. Everything that truly matters is already present. Warm shelter, enough food, honest work completed, loved ones resting safely nearby. Outside, snow continues its gentle descent, covering yesterday's footprints and preparing the valley for another fresh morning. By sunrise, the fields will shine beneath a smooth white blanket untouched by travelers. The first birds will cautiously greet the dawn. Smoke will once again rise from cottage chimneys. The baker will light his oven. The blacksmith will awaken his forge. And the miller will walk through the crisp winter air toward the familiar sound of the faithful river. He will unlock the heavy oak door just as he has done for countless mornings before. The great wheel will begin its steady turning. Fresh grain will become fine flour. Another ordinary day will quietly begin. Imagine yourself drifting gently toward sleep as the fire burns lower and lower. The warmth of the hearth surrounds you. The scent of oak smoke, fresh bread, wool blankets, and dried herbs lingers softly in the air. Beyond the cottage walls, the old watermill keeps its silent watch beneath the moonlit sky, while the river whispers its endless lullaby through the peaceful valley. And as the last glowing ember slowly fades into a gentle crimson light, the quiet heart of this medieval village rests peacefully, ready to greet another calm and ordinary tomorrow.